And at the end of the day, this is stuff that we as Christians, we know it will have to come to pass in order for the new true Jerusalem to be installed on earth, as it says in Revelations. But in the meantime, we should still be doing what we need to show the Christian spirit, to try to bring people to Christ before these end days. But on the end days, that brings me to another thing. You've heard what this one company, I can't remember what they're called, but I saw it about 3 months ago. And if you track it to the CEO is also Jewish. It's a chip, and they've only instated it so far for their employees to be able to pay at the vending machine. But it's a chip that's installed in your right palm, and you just swipe your palm in front of the vending machine to pay. It's got all your credit card information and stuff like that stored on it.
That's creepy and authoritarian in the extreme, and it sounds like the mark of a beast.
It does. Like I said, so far it's only been instated in this company for their employees with the vending machines, but if Revelations is to be believed, this is about to be rolled out on a major scale.
Oh, great. That's something to look forward to. And before I lost signal there, I was going to say on gender ideology, it is the Gnostic dualist heresy that the soul must be separated from the body, whereas God give you a soul and a body together.
Precisely, and what we was discussing with like the sex crimes that are relating back, like the Epstein, the really disturbing part is by their own religion, the Talmud. What Epstein was doing wasn't wrong by their religion.
Yeah, they go down to 3 years old, and quite frankly, that is disgusting. And you've also reminded me of something else on gender ideology and sex crimes. Have you ever heard of an offense called rape by deception?
I have, actually.
And basically, it's pretend to be one thing in order to coax someone into sex, which is degenerate.
Yep. Here in South Carolina, it's not called rape by deception, but it's the same charge. It's called rape by coercion, but same deal.
Thank goodness that there are US states that haven't gone along with such degeneracy thus far.
Yes, frankly, right now it's mostly the what's referred to as the Bible Belt states of the United States that haven't gone along with it, which is primarily the southeast down to the southwest, like below the Mason-Dixon line. Ironically, those states are still holding true to conservative ideals, with the exception of North Carolina for some reason, because North Carolina somehow got a Democratic governor in charge a few years ago, and you know, the Democrats, they claim to be so progressive and everything.
And a certain trucker who claims to be Marxist-Leninist votes for the Democrats.
Oh, yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about. Dusty Nettleson.
Does he still claim to be Marxist-Leninist?
Yeah, he does, but he's primarily organizing with the Democratic Socialists of America. I imagine that.
Oh my goodness. And what did you think of Zoran Mamdani? I think he's just another Cortez.
I do. I really do. Zoran Mamdani, if you look at some of the changes he's instated in New York, it's very disturbing. Like, he's jacked up property taxes to fund all these social programs. But if you follow the money, a lot of the people that the social programs are supposed to be for anyway aren't getting the money.
Fuck. And did you see that he was condemning Venezuela and Cuba while he was hiring a transgender rabbi to his translation team?
I did actually see that. He was actually when Charlie Kirk, and I'm sure you know who Charlie Kirk is. When Charlie Kirk was assassinated, he was one of the Democratic politicians celebrating Charlie's death.
That was such a low bar to clear. I must have been one of the first people to upload a video condemning it and giving condolences to his family. Even though
Same here, because what made the Charlie Kirk assassination even worse than the people applauding it was Charlie was killed in front of his 3-year-old daughter. She witnessed that.
But as I was going to say, it was such a low bar to clear. I was calling him a Zionist heretic the month before. Nick Fuentes, the Hoodies, Parker, and Dean Willers, none of them fans of Charlie Kirk, all condemned it. Yet people couldn't clear that bar.
Yeah, that's what's really disturbing about the trajectory of the Democrats in America. I mean, I'm not a real big fan of Republicans either. I vote Republican because they're at least true to my conservative ideals. But at the end of the day, Republicans are just a different branch of liberalism.
Unfortunately, true. And they're not doing enough to be economically populist.
About that, actually, Trump actually did something that surprised me recently with the tariffs that he instated, because all these other countries were putting tariffs on us before he instated it. He just announced a social program where the citizens of America are going to benefit from the tariffs. In addition to our normal tax return, everyone in America that pays into taxes will be getting an extra $2,000 back on their taxes as returns from the tariffs.
Well, it's better than nothing, but I think he could go a lot further.
He could, but at least this is kind of a step in the right direction. I do love, though, how you hear about what he did recently with the SNAP program, right? The food stamp program. All the Republican states have sent in the information to be reviewed by DOGE, the Department of Governmental Efficiency, except the blue states. The blue states are resistant, and SNAP, a lot of people don't realize this, but it's not under the legislative branch. It's not under the judicial branch. It falls directly under the executive branch. Trump said until these blue states send in the information that the red states complied with, these blue states will not be receiving SNAP benefits or any form of government welfare.
So that's going to leave a hole in their budgets, and it's their own fault for not doing full disclosure.
It is. And the whole reason Trump went about this with the Department of Governmental Efficiency is because he feels, and honestly it's true because I've seen it myself, that a lot of people that don't need these benefits are taking advantage of it. It's pretty much what we call down here in the South welfare queens. They pop out a lot of babies, dad ain't home, so they milk these benefits.
Ironically, the biggest welfare queen of all is Bibi Netanyahu.
Yeah, that actually, right before Charlie Kirk's death, originally Charlie Kirk was very pro-Zion until he started actually researching it himself. And the 3 months leading up to his death, he had started becoming critical of Bibi and Israel in general, supporting the Palestinians against the genocide.
But isn't it funny, after everything he done for them, they kill him?
It is, because you can't convince me that wasn't a Mossad operation.
One of the videos I uploaded within the last few months was Israel definitely killed Charlie Kirk. Like, all the evidence points one way.
I'll actually have to go back and watch that video by you. I haven't seen that one.
It must be about a month ago now, but it was, or a month or two, actually. But all the evidence was pointing in one direction. And a lot of things happened for Israel after September the 10th. And
oh yeah, I'm very well aware. I've seen the things that have been going on as far as Israel. They've been ramping up the genocide for one.
As I said earlier, 2 babies or 2 children a day since the fake ceasefire came into effect.
You said 2 children a day?
That's what they've been killing since.
That's sad. And a lot of the world, they won't wake up to this because they're brainwashed by the media, which, again, you follow the money with the media. It's them on top.
Every single time. And did you see Michael Rappaport bragging about that recently?
I actually haven't seen Michael Rappaport.
But yeah, he was bragging about every single time and how great it was.
It's become a saying with me that every single time Berg, Witz, bombs Stein, every single time.
But yeah, did you know Israel was the only country to issue a statement denying involvement in his murder? And basically,
I didn't know that.
And Netanyahu had a tweet out giving condolences before Trump had even announced that Kirk had died.
Oh, no, I hadn't seen that. So, yeah, that just gives more credence to the fact that Israel had Kirk taken out.
Kirk had rejected a $150 million offer from Ackman, whereas Tyler Robinson's father got $1 million from Ackman after Tyler Robinson was set up. And Tyler Robinson said in one of his police interviews that he was supposed to get paid. He never said by who, but I think it's very clear who was meant to pay him.
That don't surprise me because, you know, the kid that tried to assassinate Trump and shot off part of Trump's ear, you know, he went to a private high school. Guess who, if you follow the money, that high school was owned by? BlackRock, which is owned by Larry Fink, one of them.
You never saw him in the BlackRock advert?
Oh, I have seen the advertisement.
Yeah, it's just so strange that a BlackRock kid was able to get in that roof in Butler, and we're not supposed to ask questions about it.
Well, see, and I don't know if you ever saw, there was this one policeman. He was working that day with the Pennsylvania State Police. He said right before the kid shot, he saw the kid, and he called and he chirped over the radio, "We've got a present threat at possible shooter." And he was told by his superiors to stand down. And when he came out on the record and said this, he was fired from his job.
So not merely silenced, he was fired?
He was fired.
That's disgusting. And the fact that there's impunity with it and that Trump hasn't investigated the people who tried to kill him, it's moral cowardice at best.
It really is. But at the end of the day, Trump, the way I see it, especially with the whole BlackRock connection, at the end of the day, Trump, though he is doing some things for America, his handlers are the same as every president before him.
I think he's went above and beyond for them, so he has. And I think that's
He
been disappointing.
he has. I mean, you know his son. You know his son-in-law Jared Kushner is one of them.
Yeah, and he was involved in the Gaza deal.
Yeah.
He also, and during the first term, I read that he was funding the settlements in the West Bank.
Yeah.
And even him and Steve Witkoff did an interview on network television, and basically even people as biased as those two had to admit, yeah, it's Israel's fault that there hasn't been peace.
Yep, and you know Benjamin Netanyahu's actually he's got an international arrest warrant from the ICC, but nobody's tried to act on it.
I can't see any of the EU nations acting on it or having the balls to.
Me either. If anything, I think if anyone tries to bring them to justice, it would be one of the BRICS nations.
I don't even think I don't think BRICS or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are going to do anything either. I don't think anyone's going to do anything. Maybe that's pessimistic on my part, but I just can't see anyone being held accountable.
Unfortunately, you're probably right, but I would love to see Bibi held accountable.
I'd like to see him in a GULag, to be quite frank.
Same here. I'd like to see him in a North Korean GULag.
The Kwaliso.
Yep.
And shall we get on to the topic of abortion?
Yes, of course.
I have a few facts to read out here. The National Center for Biotechnology Information found that 96% of biologists affirm that human life begins at fertilization. The Social Science Research Network found that 95% of biologists affirm that human life begins at fertilization. And I would say that abortion is the premeditated killing of an innocent person. In other words, murder. Thoughts?
It is. It's infanticide.
I remember when they were repealing the 8th Amendment in Ireland, and someone corrected me and said, it's not murdering babies, it's infanticide. And I was like, and what's the definition of infanticide?
Murder of infants.
Yeah, they didn't think that one through. And I remember when we were doing the March for Life in Dublin, in O'Connell Street, there were people from a certain ideology waving their wee hooked crosses and giving Roman salutes while protesting the repeal of the 8th.
Well, yeah, you know, as far as abortion goes here in America, you know, the founder of Planned Parenthood was a woman named Margaret Sanger. She was a notorious racist. Her abortion clinics were her own form of eugenics because they were propped up primarily in minority neighborhoods, like Irish neighborhoods and African American neighborhoods.
But she said that, this is her words, colored people are like weeds to be removed.
Yeah, and at the time of Planned Parenthood, my Irish ancestors who came here were considered colored. Irish weren't always considered white here in America.
A simple DNA test would have dispelled that notion, but Did you know that Margaret Sanger was supported by the Ku Klux Klan of that day?
Oh yes, 100% she was supported by the KKK.
And yet we're told that the KKK is terrible, but Planned Parenthood is good. How do they square that circle?
Well, yeah, exactly. The same thing. You got African American voters are some of the biggest ones voting for the Democrats, but the KKK were Democrats.
Not even that. Where do Democrats support putting all these abortion providers? Proximal to what kind of community?
Primarily minority communities. If you look around in America, most of the abortion clinics and Planned Parenthood clinics are in minority communities.
You'd think if they had their best electoral self-interest at heart, they wouldn't be trying to kill off their future voters. Like, is it 80% to 90% vote for Democrat? And yet,
it's like 83%.
And yet, that's the people they want to kill off. It makes no sense.
It really don't. Unless you look at it through the lens of if you keep their population smaller, you keep them compliant.
So basically, the Jewish donors win, and basically the electoral blocks have to fall in line.
Right.
That seems strange. And how did serving the Jewish donors go in the last election in 24? I think that
really, it really didn't go well for them in 24.
I think that was one of the only minority groups that voted for the Democrats in larger numbers last time.
It is, even though we did see a mass shift in voting demographics last time. Like Trump got almost 23% more votes from the African American voters than he had in his previous term back in 2016.
I think it was more than McCain and Romney combined.
It was.
And the highest since Bush Jr., if I'm recalling correctly.
You are.
And I still don't think he won his elections fairly. The same way I don't think Biden won his election fairly.
Oh no, because do you know the full process of how our electoral college works here in America?
Yeah, I think it was something like Trump was within 44,000 votes if you go by the official results of the electoral college that night. And I think that ghost votes got Bush Jr. over the line in Florida in 2000 and over the line in Ohio in 2004.
Yeah, Obama was guilty of it too. It came out with a Freedom of Information Act. Almost 28,000 of Obama's popular votes, when it was investigated, it was determined that these were dead people's social security numbers they were using for voting.
I don't know why they needed to do it with Obama, because I think he would have won even without the fuckery.
Yeah, I'm honestly right there with you. I think he would have won regardless, because the politician he was running for has never been that popular here in America. But in a way, I think that was just them making sure that the vote went to Obama. Because, Obama actually bombed with drones more people than Bush and Clinton combined.
And that was with a 90% civilian kill ratio.
Exactly. One of the people that was killed was a 14-year-old just because he was. Exactly. And then, his sister was killed a few years later under Trump's regime.
Yeah, that was one of the first things Trump did. And they said it was Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
It turned out it was a wee girl.
Yeah.
Speaking of the American right, what did you make of the whole Fuentes controversy?
I think it was a distraction more than anything.
Did you watch the interview?
I haven't watched the interview. I've seen bits and pieces of it from clips that people have shared, but I haven't been able to watch the full thing yet. And I typically don't make my judgments based off of just sound bits, essentially.
I thought it was moderate and mild-mannered, yet when the news reported on it, it was like another Holocaust, according to them. And you were like, did I watch the same interview? It wasn't like that at all.
Yeah, even from the clips I seen, it was mostly civil.
But you'd have thought that they were basically planning another final solution the way the media talked about it because of who owns and controls the media.
Yeah, I mean, you're right there. We all know who owns, controls the media, world finance, world banking, energy.
I think the part that stood out most in the interview was when Nick Fuentes told Tucker Carlson that he admired Stalin. And
Fuentes said that?
Yeah, and Tucker Carlson was taken aback. Like, you admire Stalin, as in shock horror. And that's another thing the media got their knickers in a twist about. But they haven't looked at the full context. Even though Nick later in that week, a week or two later, I think it was, advocated for building socialism in one country in relation to America. However, he said that he admires Stalin because of centralization and industrialization, but still says that he was evil for killing tens of millions of people. Like, I think
God, quoting Black Book of Communism right there.
I thought that was a bit much, the latter part. Of course, I like the industrialization and the building socialism in one country part, but exaggerating the death toll was a bit much. And it's not like tens of millions of Christians were killed by the Nazis. Oh wait, they were. And did you see the Heritage Foundation guy, Kevin Roberts, being humiliated after he defended Tucker?
No, I didn't.
But basically, those in charge, and we know who I'm talking about, made him prostrate himself in front of them and apologizing to him, and yet still got the lecture anyway.
Wow.
It was, if anyone had any regard for heritage before, I'm sure they lost that regard, seeing the way Kevin Roberts was made to behave.
Yeah, that's disgraceful, honestly.
Because he wouldn't cancel Tucker. I thought it was Fuentes that wanted cancelled. Like, it makes no sense. He still disavowed, even while he was defending Tucker, he still disavowed Nick Fuentes. So Where is the line? Or is it just shut it all down?
Sounds like for him, it's just shove it all down, pretend it ain't there.
But do they not realize that the more they try to shut it all down, the more of a backlash and pushback it's going to get?
100%, because humans are curious by our very nature. So if information is being suppressed, we're gonna try to find what information's being suppressed.
And speaking of the backlash, even though I'm glad to see that there's a backlash against the establishment and Zionism, I'm not entirely comfortable with people giving Nazism a fair hearing. Like, I think there are lines, and that's one that shouldn't be crossed, or else it's not just going to be the Jays up in round one, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, as I said a few minutes ago, tens of millions of Christians were killed by the Nazis. There were Irish cities flattened, killing over 1,000 people. And between 28 million and 40 million Soviets were killed. And for people who are pro-white, who think, oh, the Nazis don't sound so bad, the Nazis let Kalergi cross the Swiss border in exchange for gold. Like,
yeah, I mean, you're right. These are things though that, at least here in America, information like that about the Kalergis and all is suppressed. Like, you hear in history, Nazis bad, etc., but you never hear the full details of exactly what they did, other than 6 million Jews.
And that wasn't even all the people that were killed during the final solution. Like,
you're right. Not to mention those numbers are greatly exaggerated anyway. If you look at the American Red Cross records of the time, only 250,000 Jews were actually killed in the extermination camps, which is still a drastic number, but not as much as they try to make it appear.
Even taking the high estimates, do you ever hear of a place called Jasenovac?
No, I haven't actually.
It's in Croatia, and what was done to Serbs there was far worse than what was done to the Jews at Auschwitz-Birkenau. In fact, I think people who were at both camps agree that Jasenovac was far, far worse.
And when we're speaking of other countries in relations to like the Nazis and all, look at the Banderites. You know, Stephen Bandera was
Bandera.
He was so savage that Himmler considered him a rabid dog. And for someone like Heinrich Himmler to consider you a rabid dog, that's saying something.
Too far. And do you know what still annoys me? Do you remember what happened in Canada?
Oh yeah, where they honored a member of the GULag 14th Waffen SS.
The Galician Waffen
Yeah, Galician, I mean. Yeah.
And Yaroslav Hunka, who was a literal Holocaust perpetrator, and both Anthony Rota and Justin Trudeau knew damn well who he was before he went in and got his 2 standing ovations. And do you know what's really annoying about that? The same people who were saying not all Waffen SS 2 weeks later were calling us all anti-Semites for opposing Palestinian genocide.
Yeah, same people. People like Camlaz.
And basically 800,000 plus killed because they were too busy defending not only Zionists but actual Nazi Holocaust perpetrators. That's like, and that was a direct consequence of the Liberals' reaction to the special military operation. I couldn't believe what I saw in February 2022. Like, everyone.
I could, when it comes to the Liberals, you scratch at the end of the day, you scratch a Liberal, a fascist bleeds.
And a lot, well, as things are going in Donbass, a lot more fascists are bleeding now.
Oh, yeah, I know the Azov Battalion, for example, their numbers have greatly increased since the start of the military operation.
As has their body count from the Russians, giving them what they deserve.
Yeah, though I will say it pleases me when I see these videos coming out of Russia of them striking an Azov encampment. You'll just see like a drone footage, and then you'll see a bunch of the Azov running as they're getting fired on.
It warms the heart, and it's something that the sooner Russia wins, the better. And that brings me on to Ireland, as a lot of those Ukrainians who fled after provoking Russia ended up here. And Ireland's not the nearest safe country. They have to spend a week crossing the European continent from east to west in order to get to Ireland.
Oh, wow. I didn't know it took that long.
It takes a week to get from Western Ukraine to Ireland, and yet they all came here. Why?
I don't know. Maybe they thought that the UN would protect them, and the UK is a member country, aren't they? Or
no, the Britain left the EU in, I think it was the first week of 2021 when it eventually got done.
Oh, okay, yeah, that was the whole Brexit situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was my father's last vote, so it was. Before he died.
Yeah. Well, your father voted for something honorable. The EU is a corrupt organization.
Have you ever read The Shocking History of the EU by Sina Cohen?
I haven't, actually. I'll have to look that up.
But basically, and yeah, Sina Cohen is one of those people, for those wondering. But for all intents and purposes, it is the Fourth Reich.
You know, I've never thought about it like that, but it kind of makes sense with, I guess you would say, the ideologies of the EU as a whole.
And it's also centered around Germany. A united European state united around Germany. Who wanted that?
The Germans were responsible for the Third Reich.
Also, and do you know who ironically funds and supports the EU?
Germany or France?
The Jays.
The Jays. Don't surprise me.
But, and Sina Cohen is like, why are the Jays supporting this entity that was created by Nazis? That's what she asks in the book.
Another organization created by Nazis. Look at who the first chairman of NATO was.
He was one of the Reichswehr generals, was he not?
He was.
That's what I thought. And
the first director of NASA here in America was a result of Operation Paperclip. Hans Werner, the one that developed the V5 rockets for the German military, later went on to become the first director of NASA here in the U.S.
Have you ever looked closely at the center of the NATO logo?
Oh yeah, I have. It's a swastika right there in the logo.
I would say it's a hooked cross, which is the symbol of a certain party.
Oh yeah, I've noticed. I mean, and it makes sense because look who their first chairman was.
In order to fight the Eastern Bloc, why not have someone who fought the Soviets? Is their logic? Do you not agree?
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. Yeah, I'm all right. I just dropped my phone, but that's the funny thing to me. The Soviets, people like to say, "Oh, America won World War II." No, if it wasn't for the Russians, the Germans would have won World War II. The Russians gave the greatest sacrifice to ensure the Nazi regime couldn't grow any further than it had.
And the Soviets were responsible for 3/4 of all Reichswehr fatalities.
They were, and another prime example is right after the war when you had the East German Republic and West Germany that was separated by the Berlin Wall. West Germany was still appointing former Nazis as government officials. Meanwhile, in East Germany, if you was even remotely Nazi associated, it wasn't going to be a good day for you.
Also, did you ever read Yanis Varoufakis's book, "And the Weak Must Suffer What They Must"?
I haven't actually. There's actually a few books I've been meaning to read.
He tells the story about how the Deutsche Bank engineered a recession to put a former member of the German Workers' Party into the chancellor position.
Oh. Yeah, I've definitely got to read that book. I know it's on the required reading list for the ACP because despite what the more quote-unquote red libs think, talking about we need to read theory, they're the ones that really need to read it. They quote it out of context all the time, but us members of the ACP are up to our necks in theory. It's a part of it's one of the requirements of being a member of the cadre.
I'm going to take you back there hostage a little bit.
Also, can I ask for your opinions on what's happening in Ireland at the moment?
Yeah, the thing, we talked about it the other day. You talking about Irish get out, painted on the wall, graffitied on the walls in court. That's very disturbing. Yeah, exactly. That's very disturbing to me because my grandfather, he was a member of a certain Irish organization that resisted the UK before he came to America in 1971. And Ireland is for the Irish. That is just, in my opinion, that is horrifying that there's graffiti like this in Ireland, the home of the Irish.
That I would say, Era Don Yarni, Inishalga Don Laharni. Also, the definition of settler colonialism is the indigenous people of a region are displaced by settlers who form a permanent society there. Now, with mass immigration, what does that sound like? Sounds like
settler colonialism.
Also, here are a few facts. At the beginning of the plantation of Ireland, there were 54 Irish people for every foreigner. At the end of the plantation, it was 17 Irish people for every foreigner. Today, it is 11 Irish people for every foreigner. So you can see which way the direction of travel is.
Yeah, And honestly, to me, this is very disturbing because at the end of the day, this is all a direct result of the fallout that was caused by the GFA in the 90s, which was a complete sellout of the Irish independence movement.
Yeah, Sunningdale too really fucked us over. And another fact is that 88% of Irish people retain the genetic marker of the first people in Ireland, and that's according to the University of Oxford study, The People of the British Isles.
Yeah, and that brings me to my next point. The whole the liberals love to push this theory, the whole out of Africa theory. There is archaeological evidence that shows that there were people in Ireland long before the out of Africa theory happened.
On that, do you know where the first hominid was from?
No, actually.
Greece. It's called Greco-Pithecus. It means Greek ape. So when the first human came down from the trees, it was in Greece. And then they went round the Levant and down into Africa, only to come back up and go around the world again.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so this out of Africa thing has been discredited thoroughly by this point. Also, how familiar are you with the Larnians and the first Irish people?
I'm not super familiar with it. I'm ashamed to say.
Well, Cessair was the first woman in Ireland, and her father was Beth, who was a son of Noah who drowned in the flood. And so when Cessair and the Larnians got the Western Caledonia, which is now Argyll in Western Scotland, the place flooded. So basically, the escape of flood, they went to Western Scotland, and then it flooded. And then they saw Antrim's hills, so they kayaked across Beaufort's Dyke and landed in Kern Point in Larne, hence the Larnians. And then Cessair was the first woman in Ireland, and basically she progenited the Irish nation after that.
Okay, yeah, I'd never heard that route for Ireland. I've heard of obviously the mythological routes, the Tuatha De Danann and the Firbolgs and all.
The Tuatha De Danann. This is long before that.
Okay.
Also, do you know how the Irish became Gaelicized and Celticized?
No.
Skoda was a pharaoh's wife. I think it was Ramesses II. And basically this was in the times of Exodus. And Skoda, who is the progenitor of the Scots, she had a son called GULag, and a certain guy called Moses helped him because he was crippled and healed him so he was able to walk. And after the Exodus, they went into Europe and then basically Gaelicized the Irish and Scotiatized the Caledonians.
Okay.
Well,
I'd never heard about that.
Caledonians, but yeah, you can trace these characters back to the first two books of the Bible, Genesis and Exodus, and this is why a certain painter said the Irish are Mediterranean Semites, and he wasn't being complimentary either.
I actually had never heard that. I do. Now, I have heard of the Table of Nations after the Ark landed and Noah's sons dispersed. Japheth would go on to become the father of the Euros and Asians. Ham would go on to become the father of the South Africans and Canaanites, and then Shem would become the father of the Semites.
Well, the Hamitic peoples are in the Horn of Africa, so that's basically Somalia to Eritrea. But have you heard of Hake?
Have I heard of what?
Hake, he was one of Noah's sons.
No, I hadn't heard of that son.
Basically, he went up to Mount Ararat and he progenited the Higher, which are the indigenous people of Armenia.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'd never heard
So
that.
the Armenians can trace their ancestry back to Noah as well.
Which, that honestly makes the whole Armenian genocide a lot more like, because they were the original people of Turkey, because Mount Ararat is in Turkey.
Well, that's really it. Long before it was ever Anatolia, and long before Anatolia was Hunnicized and Turkicized, it was Western Armenia.
Oh, wow. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, and basically the Armenians got screwed in Sykes, Picot, and the Treaty of Sèvres as well. It wasn't just the Palestinians. So two of the oldest Christian nations got the major screw job.
That's actually quite sad or tragic, like you said.
And the reason Azerbaijan gets away with genocide in Artsakh is because they provide 40% of the energy for a certain illegitimate regime on the Levant.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about, that certain illegitimate regime.
Yeah. It disgusts me, and we're supposed to look away. But Trump's apparently so concerned about Christians in Nigeria being genocided, while he's not concerned at all about Christians in Armenia. Or Christians in Palestine, for that matter. Make it make sense. Or Syria, which is under his mate Jelani.
Yeah, see, I agree with you fully there. Or even look at what's going on against white Christian settlers of South Africa, for an example.
Well, I wouldn't call the Afrikaner Boers settlers, because the Dutch East India Company brought the burghers from Northwest Europe to the Cape against the burghers' will, and they weren't free burghers, which they later became. They were the company's burghers. People under the ownership of a private corporation. I could have swore we used to have a word for such a practice.
Yeah, here in America, we had a whole war about it.
Well, I would argue that that war wasn't about that, because Lincoln said if he could have won the war without abolishing that institution, he would have. And he also said he did not care about the constitutional position. He only wanted to collect the revenue from the states. So basically, it was the punitively taxed Southern Democrat states after winning the election.
Yeah, he definitely did that, but at the same time, you can view the Articles of Secession from the South, and out of the states that seceded, only 2 didn't explicitly state the institution of slavery as the reason they were seceding.
So it was all but 2 mentioned the cornerstone principle?
Right. The 2 states in the below the Mason-Dixon line that didn't mention it were Georgia and Mississippi, the rest of them, they very explicitly stated the reason they were seceding was the institution of slavery.
So, if Georgia didn't mention it, then why did General Sherman do scorched earth?
That was General Sherman's own tactics, which were very barbaric. And it wasn't just Georgia he did that to. All southeast. It was a whole scorched earth campaign on its march to Atlanta.
So basically,
they would steal the livestock and livelihood of the different farmers and rural workers. Yeah, it was his own war crime, so to speak. Like, he wasn't commanded to do that. That was just him acting on his own. He started up north, marched through Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and South Carolina. And along the way, if the people didn't basically bow to him and provide for the soldiers, which was a violation, by the way, of the Fifth Amendment, the right to against unreasonable search and seizure, then he burned his way through and took what he wanted anyway.
Sounds similar to what Black and Tan's done in Ireland.
Yeah.
Speaking of war crimes, what are your thoughts on the upcoming war with Venezuela?
I don't agree with war with Venezuela for a few reasons. Venezuela, for the most part, is an AES nation. And obviously, as a Marxist-Leninist, I don't want to go to war with the AES nation. But also, at the same time, as a U.S. citizen, I don't want to get involved in all these other countries anyway, because, you know, the U.S. military, like, people always talk about the welfare. And there are people that really need it, like the truly disabled or those people that might be on layoff from their jobs, etc. But, you know, welfare spending accounts for less than 1.8% of the U.S. annual budget. However, military spending accounts for about 83.7% of U.S. annual spending is military.
And a lot of that's in the form of corporate welfare for Lockheed Martin and companies like that.
Yep, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, there's so many military contractors. Like, you know, there's one military contractor now that, unironically, they deal with, like, AI and self-piloted drones and all, and unironically call themselves Skynet.
You've just reminded me of that. I did see that. And it's like Palantir's name being the All-Seeing Eye from the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
But I was going to say on Venezuela, U.S. sanctions cost Venezuela over $30 billion a year. And there are over 303 billion barrels of oil in Venezuela. That's 17% of the world's known reserves. There is over $6.8 trillion worth of gold in Venezuela. It's an ally of Iran. And Maduro said that Zionism is worse than Nazism. Zionists want to wipe out all the Arabs. So that explains a lot behind this regime change agenda.
It really does. Like, my buddy, my roommate, he's actually got and like, it's so prominent with the U.S. going in and putting up, propping up false flag wars to steal other nations' resources, that when all that gold was recently found under Uganda a couple of months ago that they didn't know they had, he said, "Oh, here comes the U.S. Oh, you got a lot of gold. Looks like you could use some freedom.
Some freedom and democracy. The same way I think it's going to be freedom and democracy for Nigeria. But a few things on Nigeria. The Niger Delta oil field has 34 billion barrels of oil and 93 trillion cubic feet of gas. And that 34 billion barrels of oil in the Niger Delta oil field is out of Nigeria's 38 billion barrels of oil total. And the Niger Delta oil field is in Biafra and East Benin, the most Christian and most literate parts of Nigeria, as opposed to the Islamic Zamfara and Ono parts.
Yeah, and sadly, I see the U.S. getting involved with that because those were historically French colonies, and the majority of French energy production was from the uranium and oil that was being coming from these historically French colonies in Africa. And if you look back in history, if France starts getting a little upset about their resources not able to come to them, look at the first and second Indo-Chinese War. The second one, which was more commonly known, at least here in America, as the Vietnam War.
But, well, I just have to correct you there. Like, Nigeria was a British colony, and interestingly enough, during the Biafran War of Independence, or Biafran genocide, depends on who you ask, Britain and the Soviet Union backed Nigeria, but a certain illegitimate entity backed Biafra.
Oh.
So I think that illegitimate entity wanted to balkanize Nigeria for the resources.
Likely, because like the quote you mentioned earlier, Israel was a little Australorless in a hotbed of Arabism.
Yeah, Ronald Storrs, the loyal little Jewish ulster in a sea of potentially hostile Arabism, and the first military governor of Palestine since Pontius Pilate.
Yep.
And I think we should go over those facts again, just to remind our viewers. The Max Planck Society for the Advancement of Science found over 80,000 casualties or deaths in Gaza, and the One Path Network found it was over 800,000 deaths, and The Guardian reported over 100 Palestinians killed in Israeli jails. Since October 7th, 87% of Palestinians' ancestry from Bronze Age Canaanites, according to the genomic history of the Bronze Age Southern Levant. Ashkenazim are from the Ashkenaz region of what is now northeast Turkey, according to the University of Sheffield. And again, the Pennsylvania State University found that 82% of Israelis support ethnic cleansing of Gaza, and the Geocartography Knowledge Group found that 56% support expelling Arab citizens from Israel, and 47% support killing all inhabitants of an enemy city. And the Hebrew University found that 64% believe that there are no innocent civilians in Gaza. Like, the fact that they get away with doing this, the Jesus' country of all places, speaks volumes, does it not?
It really does. And this certain illegitimate regime, what really just bothers me with it is obviously the genocide is the biggest part of it, but at the end of the day, they love to say when you condemn them, you're an anti-Semite, when in reality, the Palestinians are the real Semites of the region.
It also enrages me that they destroyed every Christian site in Gaza since October 7th. And as far as I'm concerned, British mandatory borders are the very least Palestinians deserve, if not Ottoman borders, or better still, Roman borders, because
I would fully support the Roman borders.
Yeah, without the Roman occupation, I would love to see that, because if people look at even British mandatory Palestine compared to what the Romans recognized as Palestine, it just keeps shrinking. And now that they're on less than a fifth of what was British mandatory Palestine, how small does it have to get before people care?
That's the thing. People aren't going to care unless they'll wake up to the reality of the situation in this quote unquote illegitimate country claiming Palestine.
And this problem should have already been solved, because a certain Georgian guy by the name of Stalin created the Jewish Autonomous Oblast in Azerbaijan. And if you look at the size of that province, it is bigger than British mandatory Palestine, so they can have all the living space they want without genociding the Palestinians.
Not just that, but the oblast that Stalin set aside for them was, if you look at the borders of it and old Khazaria, it was the same region.
Khazaria was in Ukraine.
You say what?
Khazaria was in Ukraine, the old kingdom.
Khazaria took up part of Ukraine.
No, it was in Ukraine, above the Black Sea.
Yeah. But I think part of its borders kind of expanded up partially into the area of the Baltic Tigers, so to speak, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia.
That would explain a lot of Baltic peoples then. Namely Jonathan Stewart, the name but one.
Yeah.
But I think they should have went to Azerbaijan. Did you know it was their first choice as late as 1945?
No, I didn't.
And that was after World War II, after the British mandate in Palestine had existed for over a quarter of a century. So what was their excuse? Doing that and get away with it?
Yeah, they knew they could get away with it because they already had the world fully in control. Like the Rothschild family, biggest one, that were the movers and shakers throughout the Middle Ages.
Did you know that Lord Rothschild and Lord Balfour pressured Lloyd George as if he wasn't a Zionist anyway and needed to be pressured into occupying Palestine after the Great Arab Revolt?
Oh yeah, the first Zionist Congress.
No, this is the British government.
I know.
Lord Rothschild.
Oh yeah, you're right. You said Balfour, so the Balfour Agreement.
But Lord Rothschild helped him lobby the Prime Minister, and Lloyd George was already for them anyway. They needn't have bothered. He was going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But it amazes me that this history isn't taught. In fact, it's why I'm writing a history book at the moment, because there is so much history that isn't taught, that isn't known, that it's not, and they'll never let it be on corporate media because they don't want people to know it.
I didn't know he was writing a history book, but I really love history. So when you finish it, let me know. I'll buy a copy.
On Neolithic China at the moment.
That's a very interesting period of Chinese history.
Well, basically, the Yang Shao culture has expanded due to increased agriculture and its transitioning into the Langshan culture. That's the part I'm on at the moment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. When you publish it, let me know. I'll definitely buy a copy.
I think it's going to take a few years because I've started in August 2024 and I've only got the countries in alphabetical order to China done so far.
Okay.
And it's already 500 pages long.
Yeah, I definitely I'll buy the book regardless, but I can't wait to, I'll read it. But my favorite section, I'm honestly going to be real with you, will probably be the Irish and the Scottish because that's the predominance of my ancestry.
I've already got Scotland done.
Oh, okay.
Because in the Gaelic alphabet, Alba is at the start.
Yeah.
I'm doing an Irish version and an English version.
Okay.
Is there anything else we should discuss before the stream ends?
No, nothing I can think of. I think we've covered the topics that we were going to cover.
And is there anything you want to promote before I end this?
Sure. To our American viewers, if you're a Marxist-Leninist and you're tired of the red libs trying to claim your ideology, look into joining the ACP. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest parts of membership is studying the theory, and you're actually tested on it. So you can't just lie and say you've read the theory.
And with that, hopefully I will be speaking with Robert again in the future. Christ is King.
Christ is King.